that so I can see how much water's left in there.
Yeah.
No, lift this. Okay. There and there. That's,
quite a bit of water.
Well, there's quite a bit, right.
Yeah.
Put it back. That's fine. In that case, we'll get it back on here. I took it off.
So what's in here? Rose hips.
Rose hips, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Quite.
God, they smell lovely, don't they?
Yeah, yeah. I had a good, it was full. And of course they've gone down. Now I've got to have another picking.
A winter's supply of vitamin C. I've got this side.
You've got that side, right? Okay. Over we go. You'd be surprised what I can do if I have to. There we are. You can put it back. That's fine. I've taken. There we are. You see, I've taken some off, but I was afraid that the water was going too far. I didn't know. I didn't want it to boil dry.
So it's the same system as the old one.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes, and if I bought the old one, it would have been over £300.
Yeah.
This one was just over 100.
Right.
And I felt it was worth it because I like the juice. I drink it all the winter, and I've got one or two friends who like it as well. But my plum trees are in flower now.
In flower now.
Yes.
That's very late, isn't it?
No, very early.
That's very early. my plum knowledge is somewhat restricted.
No, I noticed the other day that they're in flower. There's something dreadfully wrong with everything. What happened last year was this year, well, beginning of the season, they flowered. Flowered very early, plums always do, and it was too cold, and even the bees didn't fly. Why there are so many apples is because the weather was awful when the apple tree was in flower. Bees couldn't fly, and every time there was a bit of a short fine spell, they would nip out from the hive and go and feed on that tree, and then go back. So it had a huge crop, but as I say, it's small. Willow, please.
Willow. What's the matter with you, Willow?
He said, you
wagging your tail like crazy.
More treats? No. I'll give you your lunch in a minute before we go. I will. Yes.
So, do you think did you learn any of your gardening skills from your dad or your mum, do you think? Or did you...
Didn't learn any from my mum.
No?
Probably from my father. When we lived at Lidcott, he divided a vegetable garden in two. And he said, there's yours, you do it your way, here's mine, I do it my way. And he was the variety who did double digging, which meant he dug a bit, took the soil down the end of the bed, and then did another dig. A whole...
What's the point of that then? Double digging?
Yeah. That's what good gardeners did in those days.
Did they?
Now the people are encouraged not to dig because you're messing up the soil balance.
Okay.
You see, the soil at the top is different from the soil down the bottom.
Of course, yes.
And you're bringing up the poor soil to the top if you do double digging.
Who's to say it's poor further down though, wouldn't it?
It hasn't got all the nutrients in it that it's got at the top.
Right.
I mean, mine now, my gardener tells me when he digs, I've got about a foot of good soil which is full of compost, because every year in the winter we spread compost all over the vegetable garden.
Yeah.
And the worms do the job.
The worms do the job.
Yeah. I haven't got that many worms. I don't keep seeing worms like you used to, but they're obviously enough to do the job.
Yeah, when I was growing up, if you dug in the soil anywhere, there'd be worms everywhere.
Not now.
And we've lost our small birds, now we're losing our worms and we're losing our wasps.
Yeah. Not only wasps, the hoverflies and all the other insects that were supposed to be hatching in the spring.
Yeah.
They were killed off by the weather.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. No, there's something extraordinary going on. I mean, I've got plants in the garden which are twice as tall as what they ought to be. And others just haven't grown.
No.
And they've all been treated the same as I always treat them, which is pretty well, actually. I don't actually stroke them, but, I mean, yeah, it is most extraordinary.
Well, you've got a microcosm here of a wonderful garden which has got everything from fruit to vegetables to herbs.
Yeah.
And
And flowers to feed the bees.
And flowers to feed the bees, yeah.
Yeah.
And your feeders, your bird feeders, which there's nothing there at the moment, but...
Well, the food does go down slowly, so there are birds coming, but there aren't many. I used to have a female squirrel who would come, and I knew she was a female, because she would only come when she was feeding her babies. Right. And I would see she had buttons all the way down her tummy, where the nipples were. So I knew she was a female, I knew she was feeding her babies, and so I didn't chase her off. This year, she came a few times when she was still pregnant, and I haven't seen her since. But I did have a couple of half-grown grey squirrels. I know one shouldn't encourage them, but never mind. I had a couple of half-grown grey squirrels, which used to came for a while, but I don't see them now either. Because another reason is that this is the best time of year for there to be produce in the wild. Mm-hmm. Therefore, they don't bother to come to my garden.
No.
You see, there's the Millennium Green just over there.
Yeah.
And that is very carefully nurtured to produce everything that should be produced.
Yes.
And it's well balanced. So, they obviously don't need to bother. But if it turned awful, the weather turned awful, some of them will be back. Some of them won't be. I mean, if all the baby birds developed, all the baby birds that hatched developed in a year, we would be completely overrun with birds. Mm-hmm. There's got to be a survival of the fittest.
Well, of course, yeah.
But when I first came here, I had swallows nesting in the cardboard.
Did you?
Not anymore. They come and have a look around and wonder about it. And I've got a few half-made nests underneath the eaves over there. But I haven't had baby swallows here for 4 or 5 years. And I used to take, when I could walk, I used to take Willow into the field at the bottom, and she would walk round it. She loved it in there, lots of space. And it was when there were no animals in it, obviously. And the young house sparrows and swallows would play games with her. She would chase them. And I thought, oh dear, what a pity. But then I suddenly realised they were coming back for more. And she would chase them, and then they would come and they would weave in front of her. They were teasing her. Yeah. So, yeah, they definitely, of course she thought it was wonderful. She would never catch one. But, yeah, they were definitely teasing her. So I didn't bother about it. I let her chase them as much as she wanted to, and that was that. But there's nothing to chase now. There aren't any. I haven't.
Nobody's said anything about them in the village anywhere?
Up in the village, there are still house martins and there are still swallows.
Are there?
Some. But not as many as there were.
No.
And, as I say, they haven't bothered with me for years. They're just... I mean, you see, in August and September, when they're going off to Africa, you used to see them all along the wires.
The wires, yeah. You don't know,
2 or 3. That's all. Mm. Just a few.
It's true. That's a noticeable decline.
Yeah.
It's like the moths at night, isn't it?
Oh no, nothing.
We don't see any moths around.
No, not even any daddy longlegs.
No.
I mean, at one time, if you couldn't have a light on in a room without shutting all the windows.
You couldn't. No, that's true.
Now I could have a light on.
Yeah.
Windows open.
And you're right about daddy longlegs. I haven't seen a daddy longlegs for a long, long time.
I saw one last night.
Did you?
But I was very careful I didn't kill it. Yeah, one came in when I go to bed very early, you see. Yeah. And so I've got the light on, and I don't read very easily, but I listen to the radio.
Yeah.
And the light is on, windows are open. Generally there's nothing.
Yeah. As you say, a few years ago, you'd have had all sorts used to fly around the light in the middle of the room, didn't they?
Yeah. And if you drove anywhere...
Oh, windscreen would be just
covered with dead, yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen anymore.
No, and again, they are pollinators, aren't they?
Yeah.
So we've got this crisis looming that if our plants don't have enough pollinators around, there's going to be a collapse of crops.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can manage because I've got I know what I can eat in the garden. There are some things I like better than others, but if I can't eat one thing, there's usually something else that I can eat. And I've arranged it. I've got plenty of perennials that I can eat.
Yeah.
Got plenty of dandelions, and yes, one or two other things.
What about your bees this year then? Have you left them, or have you had someone in to take a look at them?
No, I have left them.
Yeah.
I was a bit worried about them, but I think they've built up again.
Right.
And I've got somebody who I'm going to give equipment to. And when he comes, I'm going to get him to do one or two little jobs for me as well. He was going to come before, but he fell and damaged his knee, and he's been incapacitated for about 3 months.
So he's a beekeeper?
Yes. He's a new beekeeper.
A new beekeeper.
And I was trying to encourage him and help him, but he had this accident. He fell in his own garden. One year he damaged one knee, the next year he damaged the other one. So, but when he can once again walk properly, he's going to come, and some of my equipment I'm going to give to him. And I've got one colony that's going, and I'm going to keep another hive, so that I've got 2 colonies. I can have 2 colonies if they decide to get going. They're going to have to look after themselves. I can't do the lifting. I'm not steady enough on my feet.
No.
And most of the people I know of my age have given up anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Are there any beekeepers in the village though?
There's one.
You could call upon if you needed some help.
Nobody that I would feel I could ask. There is somebody who does know about bees, but he doesn't bother with his own bees. So, and he's never offered to help me with mine. Right. So, no, they've just got to be feral bees now. Look after themselves. I mean, if I had a swarm that I could take, I could put it into the hive that I'm going to keep it. That's why I'm keeping an empty hive. Okay. So that if I could make another colony if I wanted to. Okay. If I could do it easily. But this year I've only had the 1 colony anyway, and they didn't do very well at the beginning of the season. I think they're building up now. And one thing I am going to do, and I can manage, I'm going to just look at them and make sure they've got enough food. But they should have, especially the way they pollinated my apple trees. So, yeah. And I've got flowers in the garden, but which I know they are still on. And you see the bumblebees, there weren't many at the beginning of the season, but there must have been 1 or 2 queens that made it, because on my lavender I had a few bees, wild bees. My own bees aren't very interested in the lavender, strangely enough. They used to be, but they're not now. But I did have a few wild bees on them, various kinds of bumblebees. But by now, they would be digging themselves into a hole in the ground to hibernate for the winter. Yeah.
How did you know they were wild bees and not your bees then?
Well, they look different.
They look different?
Yeah, my bees are completely different. Wild bees are fluffier.
Are they?
And they've got, well, you know what a bumblebee looks like.
Yes, I do, yeah.
Yeah, well, there's quite a few varieties of bumblebees, and those are wild bees.
So you would recognise your bees as against?
Oh, this was really funny. Somebody was in the garden and made a comment about it. I said, oh, yes, I looked at it and I thought, oh, yes, well, that's a PB. She said, well, how do you know it's a PB? I said, well, look, it's got a P on its thorax. And she tried to see it. But I mean, having bees in the garden, they don't bother to go a long way if they've
got food nearby.
If they've got food nearby, then that's what they have.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but they do like my friend's plant that he's got over there. He's hoping he'll have a seedling from it or something, because whatever happened, it was a plant which I didn't recognise, but they liked it very much, and they were obviously popping over the road to him rather than getting things from my garden. And you see, the honeybees don't pollinate runner bees. It's other insects that do that.
Right, even though they produce very nice red flowers, don't they?
Yeah, I know, but if the shape is wrong, the shape of the flower is wrong.
It's got to be the right shape.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Because they have to be able to get in to get it, you see.
Yeah.
So there are other things that pollinate rubber beans, and I obviously haven't got any.
No.
Or not any, because, as I say...
So I've had a good year of runner beans. Who would have pollinated my runner beans then?
Well, you must go out and sit beside them on a sunny day and watch and see what comes.
See what comes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I can't tell you. I mean, there are hoverflies, which I don't know a lot about, and they apparently are very good pollinators. And there are some moths that pollinate flowers, but of course they do it at night. Butterflies do pollinating, which is one reason why I don't want to clear out my cabbage white butterflies, despite what they do to my brassicas, because you see, I see them on the flowers.
Yeah, it's a bit of a dilemma, isn't it? Because you know they're going to eat your brassicas, as you say. They've been eating mine.
Either their progeny eat the brassicas, or they don't pollinate. So what can you do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a matter of sharing with nature, isn't it? We take some, they take some.
Well, my garden, we share very well. But I do manage to get, I mean, I have a very small appetite now, and I do manage to get enough to keep me going. I won't buy bought vegetables because I shudder to think what they're sprayed with.
Exactly.
I mean, knowing how difficult it is to grow vegetables well, I know they do something to them.
They've got
if they produce something that looks so beautiful.
They've got to have done, haven't you? You're quite right, because the volume of crop you can grow as a gardener compared with what's grown commercially, there's no comparison, is there? So they've got to be either putting stuff in the soil or spraying or whatever.
Yeah.
To get the volume of produce for commercial.
To make it commercially viable.
Yeah.
And that's why this year it's been terrible for the commercial people over in the southeast.
Yeah.
Because they were flooded.
Too much rain.
Twice. They were being flooded twice.
Yeah.
And they couldn't, I mean, and the farmers, they couldn't plant their winter wheat, or if they did plant it, it washed out of the soil.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then they had to plant something that managed in the spring. Our local farmers have managed pretty well. But our local dairy farmer tries to grow the food that his cows eat. He obviously has to buy a certain amount in, but not much. But he doesn't sell what he produces, apart from his male calves. They go somewhere where they are reared for meat. And he keeps his female calves and brings them on. And he grows different kinds of wheat, and he grows maize, and that all goes into the silo, and they munch their way through it during the winter.
Yeah.
You see that, and it's beautiful meat. Sorry, beautiful milk, but $1.70 a litre, and the farmers aren't wealthy.
$1.70 a litre.
I don't know what you pay in the supermarket, but it'd be a lot less than that.
105, 110, something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But if our village produces anything, I buy it. If it's something I use, because I can't get anywhere. I don't use enough to make it worthwhile to have a supermarket delivery, and I don't believe in supermarkets anyway, because they refuse to pay the proper price to the farmers. I mean, their milk is often their loss leader. And who does badly on it? The farmers.
Yeah, they do. There's a loss leader.
Yeah.
And why people drink skimmed and semi-skimmed is beyond me, because, you know, after the pasteurisation process, and then they skim and say, what have you got left in the milk that's of any...
White water.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember many years ago when I was a school governor at Morton Bishop, they invited us to have a meal with them, all the governors. We had to pay. They hadn't got the money to pay for us to have our dinner, but we all went, and we had one governor sat at each table, and we ate what we were given. And among other things, the children were all given a mug of milk. Well, no wonder the children didn't like it. It was skimmed, not even semi-skimmed.
Really?
I mean, it was just white water.
Yeah. When I was growing up, of course, when I was growing up, we had milk delivered to the schools.
Oh, yes.
Little third of a pint they
Yes,
were.
yeah,
right?
oh, yes.
And that was all fully whole milk.
Yeah, it was.
And in the winter time, particularly if we had snow around, the robins would just poke their beaks through the top and have the cream, right?
Blue tits.
The blue tits, yes.
Yeah, I know. They did it at people's doors as well.
Yes.
Yes, they were,
because
yeah.
you think if the birds don't want it, it's not much use to us either, is it?
Right. And when we used to have that, and I used to hate it because I didn't like the cream on top as a child.
You didn't?
No, I knew I had to drink it.
Yeah.
But I didn't enjoy it. But that was started during the war.
It was, wasn't
to
it?
make sure that all the children
Yeah.
but they stopped it. I think Margaret Thatcher stopped it because the children just weren't drinking it.
No.
I mean, either they were from homes where they only had oat milk, or else...
We all used to look forward to it. The milk coming in the morning.
Yeah.
I can see the crates now being delivered outside the classrooms.
Yeah, and in the winter they would put the crates down beside the radiators.
Yes.
So there wasn't any, because otherwise you might have had ice on the top.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yes, and the models had a paper top put on at first. Possibly they were metal tops by the time you got them. But when I was a child, they had plastic paper tops, which had a sort of wax put on so they didn't absorb the milk. And there was a bit in the middle which was easier to make a hole with.
To put a straw through.
To put a straw through. Yeah. If you were unlucky, you pushed it and it all came up in your face. And then you drank it in the straw through. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. But then of course the blue tits got the idea.
They did, didn't they?
Yeah,
yeah.
And at people's houses as well, and people used to put colours on there.
Well, yeah, everybody had their milk delivered in those days.
Oh, yes.
There was a milkman,
Yeah.
usually a couple of pints on your doorstep.
Yeah.
And as you say, by the time you got to picking it up, there was a hole in the top of it, and the birds had the cream.
Exactly, the birds had started. Yeah, yeah. And the milk floats were usually electric.
They were electric.
They were silent.
Yeah, they were electric.
Yeah, yeah. And but when I was a child, they were electric milk floats, fine. But there was also a certain amount which was delivered by a horse and cart.
Oh wow!
And we would see them delivering things to the local shops, and there would be the house, and the horse would have what they called a nose bag.
Yeah.
A bag with oats in it.
Yeah.
And while the horse was waiting for the delivery to be dealt with, the nose bag would be put on him, and he was chomping his way through his oats. And then when they moved, they'd take it off again.
We could say that some of our modern politicians have got nose bags on them.
Yes.
Chomping through the wealth of others.
They're doing rather well, aren't they? I know.